Right now in Australia, there are people doing everything right, cutting back on dinners, skipping holidays, saving every spare dollar towards a deposit. And every 3 months, when they check in with their broker, they find out they're actually further behind than when they started. That's the deposit trap. And as a broker who spent over a decade in lending, including 9 years at Westpac and 2 at CBA, I can tell you this is the most common cycle I see destroying people's property goals. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how this trap works, why the old save 20% advice is one of the most dangerous myths in Australian property, and the specific moves that helped my clients break out of it, including one couple who ditched their dream of buying their own home and ended up building 3 times the wealth because of it. We'll cover the real math behind why saving harder doesn't work, the mindset most people refuse to make, and the one strategy that looks riskier on paper but is actually the safer choice. Let's get into it. So let me tell you about a client I had. Young person, single income, earning about 100,000. They came to me and said, "Nick, I'm doing everything right. I'm not going out. I'm not buying avocado on toast. I'm saving every single week." And they were. We got them pre-approved. They started looking for properties around the 750K mark. And for 3 months, they searched. They went to open homes. They put in offers. But here's what kept happening. Every property they liked was selling for more than the listed price. And the type of properties they actually wanted, those were appreciating faster than they could save. So we get to the end of their 3 month pre-approval period. They've saved more money. On paper, they should be in a better position. But when we renewed the pre-approval with their updated savings, the goalpost had moved. That $750,000 property was now close to $800,000. Some were even pushing $850,000. So they start looking at different suburbs they never originally wanted. And by the time they found something they liked in those new suburbs, guess what? Those had gone up too. It becomes this vicious cycle. Save, search, get priced out. Save more, search again, get priced out again. Every single pre-approval cycle, the market was outrunning them. And this is what I mean by the deposit trap. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's that the system is moving faster than your ability to keep up with it. Now, here's the thing. There's one sentence I hear from clients all the time that sounds completely reasonable, but is actually the thing keeping them stuck. It goes something like this. "I just need to save another 20,000 in the next 3 months. It sounds realistic, right? Sounds reasonable, sounds responsible. But here's the problem. By the time you've saved that 20,000, the market in the area you're looking at has moved by 30, 40, sometimes more. So you save 20K, but the deposit you need went up by 40. You're not catching up. You're falling behind while doing everything right. I recently ran the numbers for the suburbs I grew up in around Sydney. Randwick, Maroubra, Mascot. Over 12 months, the cost of waiting was massive. And the 6-month projection going forward, you need to be saving over $2,000 a week just to keep at pace. That's not realistic for almost anyone. So when someone tells me, "I just need a few more months," I have to be honest with them. A few more months might cost you the suburb entirely. And this leads into probably the most dangerous piece of advice floating around in the Australian property culture. The idea that you need 20% before you can do anything. I had a client who was adamant about this. They did not want to pay lenders' mortgage insurance. They did not want to use any government schemes. They wanted a full 20% deposit before they even started the process. So I asked them a simple question. How long will it take you to get to 20%? From memory, it was about 4 months. So we pulled up the data for the suburbs that they were looking at. And what the data showed was that those suburbs were growing faster than their 4-month savings timeline. Every 6 to 8 weeks, the market was outpacing what they could save in 4 months. The numbers didn't line up for them. And look, I understand the emotional side of it. Nobody wants to pay for something they don't have to. LMI feels like throwing money away. But that's only true if you look at LMI at what it costs today. If you look at LMI as a vehicle, as the thing that gets you into the market 6 months earlier, and in that 6 months, the property appreciates by 50 or 60,000, suddenly that 10 to 15,000 LMI looks like one of the best investments you've ever made. It's an opportunity, not a waste. Now, some people hear all of this and their response is, "Fine, I'll just save harder. I'll cut everything." And I've seen what happens next. They cut everything. No eating out, no entertainment, no lifestyle. It works for a week, maybe a month. Then they crack. They don't just go back to normal. They overcorrect. They catch up on everything they've been depriving themselves of. and their savings takes a massive hit. Sometimes worse if they just had a balanced budget from the start. I see two warning signs when someone's in this mode. First, they're underestimating what they actually need to exist. And second, they're underestimating the importance of actually enjoying their life while they save. You still have to live. A budget that makes you miserable is a budget that's going to fail. And a failed budget doesn't just cost you money, it costs you time. And in this market, time is the one thing you cannot afford to waste. All right, so let me tell you about a couple who completely changed my perspective on how to think about this. They came to me wanting to buy their first property together. Classic first home buyer mindset. They thought the smart move was to buy a place to live in, use it as a foundation, and then eventually buy more property down the track. But here's the thing. They were both living at home with their parents, paying zero rent. They had their own space. They were comfortable. So we sat down, went through their goals properly. And I said, look, if you're happy where you are and you're not paying rent, why would you rush to take on a mortgage for a place to live when you could use the exact same money to start building wealth right now? Instead of buying one $1.2 million property in Sydney to live in, they ended up purchasing 3 investment properties with me in more affordable areas in Australia. 3 properties, all renting, all building equity, all growing in value. And the beauty of it is, when they're ready to buy their family home down the track, they'll have options. They can sell 1 or 2 of the investments. They'll have equity that they can leverage. They'll be in a position of strength instead of a position of scrambling. Now, most people wouldn't think of that because the older generation has drilled into us the idea that renting is dead money and you need to buy your own home first. But is renting actually dead money? Or is it only dead money if you're renting and not investing? Because if you're renting and you're putting money into property, into shares, into crypto, into anything that's growing, you're not wasting money. You're being strategic. The waste isn't renting. The waste is renting and doing nothing with the difference. Now, this last example will really drive this deposit trap home. I had a client with a 15% deposit, and they wanted to use as much of that as possible to reduce the LMI they'd have to pay. Makes sense on the surface, right? Minimize the extra cost. But when I looked at the property, I said, what if you put down less? Yes, you'll pay slightly more in LMI, maybe an extra 1,000 or 2. But you'll have a 5% buffer sitting in your account for emergencies. What if the property is vacant for a few weeks between tenants? What if something breaks? What if life just happens the way it always does? That small increase in LMI brought them peace of mind. It brought them a safety net. And in my experience, the clients who sleep well at night are the ones who are making better long-term decisions. Sometimes the cheaper option on paper is actually the riskier option in real life. So after seeing hundreds of clients go through this process, I've noticed a clear pattern between the ones who stay calm and the ones who spiral. The calm buyers, they get started early. They do the boring stuff first. They order the building and pest reports before they start negotiating on price. The stress buyers always do it backwards. They negotiate first, agree on a price, and then order the reports. And when something comes back in the report, now they have to renegotiate. The seller becomes frustrated, the buyer's anxious. The whole thing becomes 10 times more stressful than it needed to be. They had just done the reports first, they might have ruled out that entire property and saved themselves weeks of back and forth. It sounds simple, but the decision to do things in the right order, to be proactive instead of reactive, that's what separates people who get into the market from people who spend years talking about it. And honestly, that's the single biggest thing I want you to take away from this. Don't just sit on it. The market isn't going to wait for you to feel ready. The goalposts are going to keep moving, whether you act or not. The difference is whether you're on the field or watching from the sidelines. If you found this helpful, I'd recommend watching the next video where I break down exactly how the new DTI lending rules are changing what you can borrow and what you can do about it right now. If you'd like to see how you can avoid the deposit trap altogether, click the link below.